Well, I'm going to share an experience I had on Monday. Rather interesting. You never know when you're in a store or out in public what is going on in somebody else's life. I had no idea. I went to this Dollar General to get one thing, just run in and run out. And I didn't have nothing particular on my mind. I just ran in, grabbed what I wanted, went to the cash register. There was a lady at the checkout, then another lady, and then there was me. And the lady that was in front of me said, made some comment, and I said, yeah, it's Marvelous Monday. And I got a whole list of them: Terrific Tuesday, Wonderful Wednesday, Tremendous Thursday, Fantastic Friday, Spectacular Saturday, Super Sunday, all the whole bit. But anyway, I just said it's Marvelous Monday. And that lady said, well, that's nice. Well, the lady that was checking out started crying. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
I'm in a panic now because this lady's now crying. So the lady that was in front of me spoke to her and said, are you all right? And she said, my child is sick and I'm really worried about it. And so they were having a conversation. I was just kind of standing there, trying to absorb what's going on. And she said, but when that gentleman said about Marvelous Monday, she said, that just came over me. And she says, I feel okay about my child now. She's going to be all right. And then the lady that was talking to her in front of me, she took her 2 items and paid for them. Insisted, she said, I'm going to pay for your stuff right here. And she bought the lady in front of her's stuff, gave them back to her, and we all left.
It's called pay it forward.
So it's just, you never know. And all I said was Marvelous Monday. And it just changed the whole thing particularly between these 2 ladies didn't know each other. Of course they do now. They even swap phone numbers. But you never know. And I just said it's Marvelous Monday, and it just sort of just took off. And then that lady was crying, and I was in a panic.
What have I started?
Huh?
What have I started?
That's right. What did I do wrong? But you never know. And she was concerned about her little girl was sick. So yes,
I
Glenda.
wanted to I've told y'all this before, and it makes me feel so good. It's why I'm not bragging. I just feel God blessing me. But I ask people if they know Jesus, complete strangers, and I get such a blessing from it because usually they are. Very few people that I run into that are not a Christian. And I just said, well, look, if I don't see you again, I'll see you in heaven.
Except the other day,
What happened?
that woman you said that to, that woman.
What'd she say?
Huh?
I forgot. Well, I did have one. I was
Yeah.
going to try to remember that.
Yeah.
What'd she say?
She wasn't a Christian, remember? Woman said no, she doesn't believe it.
Oh, that's right. I've had 2 that have done that, 2 or 3. They said no, and they were
Atheist.
atheists. He was
Agnostic.
And I was putting groceries in the back of my car, and she walked by and spoke to me, and that's when I had the opportunity. And so I asked her that question, and she said, no, I am not a Christian. I am not a Christian. So I tried to talk to her, and she said, no, I'm atheist. And she walked away real rude. But you know what? I just prayed for her.
That's so true. Even that conversation, God wanted you to do that.
That's right.
And you put some thought in our mind about that. And maybe it's a good burden that she thinks about it. And
Yeah.
what a blessing that you do that, because that's what He wants us to do. That's
Well,
wonderful.
I kind of got away from it, and then I just started doing it again. And I mean everywhere, grocery store up here where I am, restaurant.
And by the time she gets done, the ice cream's melted.
It doesn't take long, that's the thing, is it doesn't take long.
That's right.
It does when you do it to 10 people.
But, well, today is Sunday, March 17th. And if you haven't figured it out, it's St. Patrick's Day. And what is this?
We've got a card for Mr. Gary Tuttle while we're conversing. Would you,
Do I need to give it to him?
if you would relay that out.
Well, I'll see if I can find him.
Yeah.
Everybody's invited today.
Let's
The little
see.
guy that filled up the chair.
Everybody's invited today.
Yeah,
Everybody's
Thank you.
invited to Gary's party, remember?
thank you.
That's today at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. We'll have, like food, there'll be food, not a big,
Terry said he was gonna get in and be, cause tomorrow his birthday.
food, oh,
Gary's, yeah, tomorrow, he said it'll be mine and Gary's birthday.
oh,
Awesome.
That's right. We just have a class party. Why not?
we're having a lot of our friends and relatives that are coming from out of town. So we didn't invite the whole church because of that. And our girls put it on and surprised him with it and told him on his birthday.
Okay.
Personally, I'm looking, I think they're really planning on my funeral, just seeing who's gonna show up.
That's what he said this morning. See, you know.
Well, anyway, it's St. Patrick's Day, and I'm glad y'all are here and so forth. And it's always good when we can get together. And if you didn't wear green, I would walk, 10 to 15 feet away from other people because you're going to get pinched. Because they were talking about that in the foyer this morning when I walked in, and I didn't have green. I forgot.
Well, I got a green penny in my pocket, but I like to get pinched, so I'm.
We have green now. We didn't have green, but now we do.
So anyway, it's my wife's grandmother is from Ireland. So my wife is like really Irish, of course, with her red hair and stuff. That's kind of part of it too. So anyway, we were chatting about that this morning and so forth. So it's quite interesting. And of course, the grandkids are all into these leprechauns. And my 10-year-old was, talking about the leprechauns this morning. So it was quite interesting listening about the leprechauns this morning. So it's okay. And the older one said something about the pot of gold, and they were laughing, and they were looking. It was raining. They were looking outside to see if there was a rainbow, and of course there wasn't, because they wanted to
He wanted you in the car and take him to the end of it.
go right, go to the end of the rainbow to find the pot of gold. So
I went through two ends of them, there's no gold.
there
I looked, and there was none.
there was a okay. Well, we have an authority now that there's no gold at the end of the rainbow because Debbie's been to both ends.
It's pretty cool though when you see it coming down the end and you drive through it. That was pretty cool, but
Oh, I bet it was.
no gold.
Did you take any pictures driving through it?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I was just amazed at it coming down like that.
Right. Yeah, it's quite interesting. Anyway, we'll get into our lesson today. We're in again. It's good to see everyone here on this nice It looks like it's going to be a nice sunny day after all. It started out with rain, but glad to see all of y'all here. And we're in the book of Daniel, chapter number 7. We'll begin in verse 1. But one thing last week we talked about Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And we got some information about it. Today, we're in Daniel chapter 7. We're going to get some of the same information, but some more information. And it'll be quite interesting because chapter 7 of Daniel correlates with Revelation chapter 13. So if you understand Daniel chapter 7, then you can understand Revelation chapter 17. And that's one of the keys about studying Daniel is it gives you an insight into the book of Revelation, which was written by the Apostle John. Now, one thing that a lot of people question is Daniel could not have written this when they said he wrote it because there's too much information and it's so exact. And they said, no, Daniel didn't write this. 605 BC, and he couldn't have known that. And I agree, Daniel didn't know that, but God told him. He told Nebuchadnezzar in a dream, and he told Daniel in a dream. So it's what God revealed to Daniel. And when you study the book of Daniel, Ezekiel, and Revelation, these are apocalyptic books. And the word apocalyptic means that it's something that was hidden that's now been revealed. And this is what we're studying. God's telling Daniel the future. And Daniel writes all this stuff down. So, God's telling us, and then when the Apostle John in Revelation chapter 22, verse 21, wrote the last word, Amen, that closed the Bible. And that gave us the 66 books that we have today. And so that's, how all this came to fruition. Moses wrote the first 5 books. John wrote the last book. And then, we've got all this information that we can look at today in the fellowship class and understand what's going on. And I'll show you some of this as we get into some of the scripture. And if you've ever been to a showing of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I went to see it 2 consecutive days. The book of Daniel is as part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we have information from the book of Daniel from the Dead Sea Scrolls that was dated about 5 BC. So we know that in 5 BC, people understood the book of Daniel. And one of the, I guess you'd call it scribes that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, had a little commentary about that. And that Daniel foresaw the future. And so there's lots of information about the book of Daniel that proves it was really, written when it was written, and his information is accurate. So it's quite interesting. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. Okay, now, last week, Nebuchadnezzar was king. He had a dream. And as one of our astute students pointed out, Nebuchadnezzar wasn't the brightest light on the Christmas tree. So I think that's a fair paraphrase. What Miss Betty shared with us last week. But now it's about 50 years later. And his son Belshazzar is now the king of Babylon. Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. So Daniel's having a dream. Notice this. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. So Daniel had a dream, woke up, and started writing. He didn't want to forget what he had dreamed. And that's how we get the book of Daniel. He's writing this stuff down. Verse 2, Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And we know, the wind can come from every which direction. But when we talk of the great sea, if you look at a map of the Israel and Babylon here is in Iraq, where is the nearest large body of water to Israel today?
It's the Mediterranean.
Right, the Mediterranean Sea. So Daniel is in Iraq, and he's dreaming this dream, and he's talking about the Great Sea, which is the Mediterranean Sea, which is right off the part of the coast of Israel today, but Iraq is right over. So that's the Great Sea that Daniel is talking about here. Verse 3, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Okay, now we're going to look at these beasts here. Verse 4, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Oh my goodness, where in the world were you going to find a lion with eagle's wings? Well, now remember, Daniel didn't have the book of Jeremiah. He didn't have the book of Isaiah. He didn't have the book of Habakkuk. He didn't have the book of Amos. All he had was what he had. Today, if I go in and do a search on the word lion in the Old Testament and get all the references, and then I go and do a search for eagle's wings, you'll find out that there's 2 references, and each one of them is to Babylon. So we can figure out with a, search what kingdoms he's talking about. So the first one is Babylon. So he's talking about Babylon, which was the head of the statue. The gold part of the statue was Babylon. Well, here, Babylon is, described as a lion with eagle's wings. So it's the same thing, it's just described different. Verse 5, and suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. And it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, arise, devour such flesh. So the next one is we have a bear. And if you do research, you'll find out that that's the Medo-Persians.
The what?
Medo-Persian Empire, which was the second part of our statute from last week. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And if we do our research, we'll find out that that's Greece, which was the other part of the statue from last week. And after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly strong. Okay, so here comes the 4th beast. And as we remember from last week, that was the legs of iron. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Now, last week, our statue, we talked about the toes. It had feet and had 10 toes. And we talked about we're living in the time of the toes. Well, here, the 10 horns is identical to the 10 toes. But we're going to have a new added feature here. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little horn, coming up among them, before whom the 3 of the first horns were plucked out by its roots. So now we're going to talk about the little horn and what it says about this little horn that has popped up, and he's taken 3 of the 10 horns that plucked them out. And notice the description. It says, and there in this horn, he's talking about the little horn, there were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So now we've got something new added to our prophecy. We've got the little horn who has eyes like a man and speaks pompous words. Anybody got an idea who the little horn may be? As we'll learn, we're talking about the Antichrist. The little horn is the Antichrist. And then in verse 9, we see the vision of the Ancient of Days. And most of y'all are aware we have a song that we sing in church about the Ancient of Days. And I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. And this is a description of Jesus. And I would go ahead and skip down to verse 11. I watched then because of the sounds of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. This is in reference to the little horn. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body destroyed and given up to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. A season and a time is 3.5 years, half of the tribulation period. So we see here that, Daniel has given us insight into this little horn who's going to speak all these words. And if you study Revelation 13, you'll find out the Antichrist is out doing his thing during this time. Verse 13, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man coming from the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. And this is talking about the second coming when Christ returns to the Mount of Olives to set up his kingdom for his 1,000-year reign. So Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, we just talked about, each one of the four kingdoms, the nations, talked about the nations that, came up from the Roman Empire, France, Spain, Portugal, England, and so forth. And here, Daniel in his dream is reiterating the same thing, giving us more detail. But now, in Daniel's dream, we see the Antichrist come into play. And, people have all kinds of opinions about who the Antichrist is. And I'm going to get into this. I brought my Dr. David Jeremiah study Bible with me, and I want to read an excerpt of his commentary about the Antichrist. I think it's quite interesting, but we have to realize that all this is going on, and Daniel is giving us an insight into what's coming. We've seen the Roman Empire come and go. We know the 10 nations over in what we call the European Union over there. France, England, Germany, Spain, Portugal, all those countries over there. And, we're watching because we know, just as we see here, all of this is going to end. And Daniel tells us, there's going to be a 3.5 year period when all of this is going to come to an end. And it's quite interesting how people perceive all of this, but yet they don't believe it. God said it's coming, and it's just a matter of time before all of this comes to a head. It's hard to imagine all of this and how precise Daniel was in his explanation. And then in chapter 7, verse 21, and I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them. Notice verse 22, until the Ancient of Days came, and a judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Folks, Daniel said, the little horn, the Antichrist, is going to have his day for a while, but then it's coming to an end. And then the saints will possess the kingdom, which is when we'll rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years in the millennial kingdom. 605 BC, and Daniel is laying out the future. We don't know how many thousands of years it's going to be. It's already been about, 600, 2,000. It's been about 2,700 years, and we're still living in this prophecy that Daniel saw in about 605 BC. To me, it's amazing how precise God is. And then you go and read John's account in the book of Revelation, and it's following Daniel in a little bit more detail. He actually gives us, the 7 judgments that God pronounced on the world. But it's during this time that Daniel told us about. And the book of Revelation, they believe it was written about 95 AD. So, it was about 700 years between Daniel's prophecy and John's prophecy, roughly about 700 years. But, God gave Daniel and John exactly what they needed to write this information down and share it with us today. And now we're living in this time era, and we're waiting. We're just waiting to see, what's going to happen next. We know what's going to happen, but how's it going to happen? How are the European Union going to be destroyed? And based on the text, it appears the Antichrist is going to rise up from the European Union, because you have the 10 nations, and then 3 of them go away, and you got the little horn. So based on this prophecy, most Bible scholars believe the Antichrist will come from the European Union, one of the 10 countries over there. Germany, France, England, don't know where.
England's pulled out. So that's one of them that's already pulled out of the 3. Is the European Union.
You talking about the Brexit?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
think they're gonna come back though now that Charles is in power.
I don't think so. No.
well, just be patient, because prophecy is happening weekly. And, we know that based on what Daniel seems to indicate here, the Antichrist will come from the European Union. Whatever left, he'll have his heyday, but then the Ancient of Days will come, and it will come to an end. So just go ahead, Gary.
Part of the reason the European Union got started was so they could economically combat us. And
Yes.
combining all those countries' wealth and stuff together, and they were hoping to be the world economy, but it didn't happen. So,
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
but that's what Ray said. Not to this point anyway, but that's,
But you're right. The European Union put together because of us in Russia. We kind of had the dominance here, and they're trying to put together things so they can survive economically. And as most of us are aware, the economy is the world economy is not the best it's been in a while. And we know from our study in the book of Revelation, a financial Armageddon is coming before the real Armageddon. So I think that will play a key in the power struggle as well, if these countries can't survive. And then you think about, what about Brazil? That's a pretty big country, got a lot of people. They got a little bit of clout, but what happens to countries in South America? They're not mentioned in prophecy, but some of those countries are pretty big, and it's interesting when you start looking at the globe and trying to understand. You're sitting here reading, and all you hear about is the European Union. And now all the land around Israel over there on that continent. It's interesting trying to, but then I say, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure out God, and I'm not even close, so I'm not even going to worry about it. But, you just wonder sometimes what's going to happen to all these big countries that aren't mentioned, and it's amazing to me. But God shared all this with Daniel, and today we can sit here and it's intriguing. And then in verse 24, he begins the explanation. It says, "The 10 horns are the 10 kingdoms who shall rise from this kingdom." So these are the 10 nations that rose up from the Roman Empire. "And another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings." Okay, so the little horn's going to take out 3 countries. "He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and laws." So the little horn's going to come on the scene, start talking. He's going to try to change times and laws. "Then the saints shall be given into his hands for a time and times and a half." That's 3.5 years. "But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole earth shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him." This is the end of the account. "As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my heart." I can imagine if I had a dream like Daniel had and saw all of this coming and I didn't understand it, I'd be troubled as well. But he wrote it down for us. So we see that the 10 kings are there. 3 of them are going to go away. Then the little horn's going to show up, which is the Antichrist. Then he's going to be running around having dominion for 3.5 years. Folks, that's scary. And then when you go and read John's account in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, things begin to make sense about the Antichrist and all of his, we'll call them shenanigans that he tries to pull off. But, Daniel told us it's coming. So I have, as I said earlier, my Dr. David Jeremiah Study Bible, and he's got an interesting take on the Antichrist. I want to read his opinion from his book, from his Bible, one of the study notes. It says, "One of the most popular discussions among theologians is trying to identify the Antichrist spoken of by Daniel and the Apostle John. Everyone and everything, from individual Roman rulers to the whole Catholic system, from the Pope to Oliver Cromwell, from Adolf Hitler to John F. Kennedy, from Henry Kissinger to Julius Iscariot, has been made a candidate for the title of Antichrist. Thought that was interesting. I never heard John F. Kennedy being one, but I had heard of Henry Kissinger. Anyway, it says in Revelation 13:18, we are told the number of the Antichrist is 666. People have tried to go out and figure out who the Antichrist is by playing number games. And the truth is, anyone can be the Antichrist by that method. You can have to follow 3 simple rules. If the proper name does not work, add a title. If that does not work, try it in English, then try it in Hebrew, then try it in Greek, then try it in Latin. So if you can't trying to figure out who this is, you can play these games and try the English, the Hebrew, the Greek, and the Latin. Number 3, if none of these things work, cheat on the spelling of the name. So, everybody's trying to figure out who the Antichrist is, and Dr. Jeremiah here is trying to give us a little bit of insight. And then we get down to nobody knows what the number means. We will not know until God reveals it to us. We also do not know who the Antichrist is, but we can know that he is and where he fits. The Antichrist fits into the latter portion of the 4th kingdom that Daniel speaks of in chapter 7, verse 7, near the end of that kingdom. And that's what we are discussing today is, we know he fits in at the end of this last kingdom here, near the end of the kingdom. It says, a man will rise to take leadership over it, the Antichrist. The Antichrist will be a charismatic leader. Humanity is ripe for a leader who will come on the world stage and offer the answer to the world's vast problems. And he's referenced in Revelation chapter 13 now. When the Antichrist comes and by supernatural revelation establishes himself as the one with those answers, the world will be so elated they will fall down at his feet. So I thought that was an interesting insight by Dr. Jeremiah about who this person is and all the schemes that people are trying to come up with this 666 number. People are just so intense. Oh, we got to figure this out. It's got to be, and I listed several people and they've done different kinds of things to come up with it, but we don't know who he is. And maybe God will reveal it to us in due time, but who knows? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I thought Dr. Jeremiah's take on it was somewhat enlightening as to what people think and who the people think it could be, and all the people that have been named the Antichrist from the past. Like I said, I had heard Adolf Hitler and so forth. I never heard that John F. Kennedy was, but, everybody has their opinions and so forth. So it's very interesting.
I think on Kennedy, a lot of that came out when he was running for president and him being Catholic. They were afraid the Pope was going to be actually running the country, That was I can remember that was a big campaign thing against Kennedy.
Yeah. But anyway, and I definitely have heard Adolf Hitler in there and so forth. So it's interesting how people come up with all these ideas and schemes of trying to figure it out because, it's the Antichrist doesn't actually come up until right after the rapture, because the rapture is going to stir up everyone because all these people are suddenly gone in the twinkling of an eye. People don't, where is, what happened to Gary and Glenda? They're not home today. And people are running around and they're looking for James and Billy and they're not home. And, they're running around looking for these people and they're not there. And people will get excited. Their next door neighbor, going to be real upset if Gary and Glenda aren't home. They don't see the nightlight on. They're gonna be upset. So it's interesting, but it's coming. Daniel saw it, and John reiterates it again in the book of Revelation. Folks, it's coming, and we got to be ready. And we also, the Bible tells us, be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within us. We've got a hope that, it's coming and we're going home for good, not our
All
earthly.
that commercial on TV about that, they're talking about all the cameras and stuff, and then it's showing people just disappearing.
Yes.
So, that was a pretty cool commercial.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to, it's going to be zip, 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 zip. And it's different. It's going to be different. I mean, nothing like that has happened before. Well, not to the extent it is. I mean, Enoch was taken up. Elijah was taken up. But, I mean, for, let's say 50 million people just, bam, just gone. I mean, nothing like that's ever happened. And people are going to be upset. What happened to, Carrie and Debbie and Billy and James and, Gary and Glenda? They're gone. They were here, now they're gone. Can you imagine being at a family outing and all of a sudden the rapture happens and half the people at their family gathering are gone? People are not going to understand that.
No, at least they went on a full stomach.
Yeah, well, that's true. So,
The Last Supper.
that's right.
Around here it's probably fried chicken too.
But, we just need to be aware that Daniel, first of all, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. Daniel interpreted it by God's grace. Daniel has a dream and God helps interpret it as well. And he understands, that something's coming. There's 4 kingdoms coming. And then these 10 toes in the first one, the 10 horns. Then the little horn's going to take over. Then we heard Dr. Jeremiah's take on the Antichrist. We don't know who it is, but he's coming. But we know the rapture's coming first, and then 7 years of tribulation, and then the second coming and the millennial kingdom and eternity and on and on and on. But we just need to be aware that now, with the information from chapter 2 and chapter 7, Revelation 13 begins to take a better, is easily understood much better now. Now, next week, we're going to dive a little deeper. We're going to go into Daniel chapter 9. Then we'll go over to Matthew chapter 24 the following week and look at the Olivet Discourse. and all of the things, because it tells us what to look for. And we'll be looking at some of the news headlines when we look at Matthew 24, because you can see earthquakes, disease, famine. You know there's a big famine in Africa right now.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So, folks, God is telling us in His Word, He's given us His signs of what's coming so we can get ready. And we need to be ready, and we need to make sure our friends and family are ready. But anyway, that's, the Daniel chapter 9, Matthew chapter 24 will be the next two lessons. And then we'll come back to Daniel chapter 11, then Ezekiel chapter 38, and then Ezekiel 39, and then the book of Revelation. Okay, so that's sort of the roadmap. But right now, Daniel chapter 9, then Matthew 24, and then Daniel chapter 11, and then Ezekiel 38 and 39, and then the book of Revelation. And we'll learn a little bit more about what's going on when we get to Ezekiel with the Battle of Gog and Magog, which involves Russia and Iran and those countries. Very interesting how all this fits together and all the prophecies that are coming forth, and we see it today. Russia's flexing its muscles, Iran flexing its muscles, setting the stage for the Battle of Gog and Magog. So, got lots more to investigate in the coming weeks. Does anyone have a question or comment?
When I was reading that, at verse 6, where you said it was Greece, I was thinking that was Egypt. Of course, Greece makes more sense, but I was thinking it was a country of Egypt because of their beliefs in a lot of the birds and stuff they did.
But no, it was
Greece.
Babylon, and then Medo-Persian, and then Greece under Alexander the Great, and then the Roman Empire, and then we talked about the 10 toes, and of course Daniel saw them as 10 horns, and then the little horn came up, which is the Antichrist. And so the scenario has developed. Last week we talked about just the 10 toes, but now we've learned out of the 10 toes comes a little horn, which is the Antichrist. So we're building the story and we're beginning to fit the whole picture together of what's coming. And so now we're living in the times of the toes and the times of the horns. So we're building and waiting. And so, watch the headlines and see what's going on with our friends across the Great Sea, and see what's going on in, all those countries over there, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal. What's going on over there? Or is there unrest, turmoil? It's just another sign that it's coming. And it won't be long, I don't think. I'm 2/3 of the way through my book, 22 Reasons Why I Think the End is Near, and it's quite interesting. He talks about digital currency and the LGBTQIA2S plus movement and all of that.
Did we cover prayer requests?
Not yet, no.
We're getting there. I'm just asking any questions about the lesson. Okay, Daniel chapter 9 next week. Okay, so get out your your spectacles and you can start reading ahead and get an idea of what we're going to look at next week. Now, prayer request. Glenda, you got a prayer request?
I was sitting here thinking of several people, but, one in particular I can't think about right now. I've got several on my mind. My sister's brand new baby,
2 months
2
old.
months old, got COVID, and 2 months old. And they were thinking she was about to die one day, that she was not responding one day. And they just, my sister called, and I may have sent it out to y'all online. I did. Anyway, we were just so worried that baby was going to die 2 months old. But she got better. So, and she was in the hospital for a few days, but she's gone home now and normal. It's normal. And they said that, it's just prayer. Prayer did it.
Yeah. We had a nephew die from COVID about 10 days ago.
No, you did.
It's, COVID, people think, well, COVID is gone. No, it's not. And if you have COPD or bad asthma or stuff, COVID can be very dangerous.